Have you noticed the Gospels are all about understatement? A few words convey a mountain of meaning. In Luke's Gospel on Christmas, we read, "The time came for her to have a child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son." We read nothing about the pain of Mary's labor, or her and Joseph's fears, fending for themselves in the cold. St. Ignatius, in his spiritual exercises, asks us to go beyond each understatement to imagine in minute detail the smells and sounds and feelings of the gospel scenes. I followed St. Ignatius' advice as I read and prayed about the Annunciation and the birth of Jesus. "Behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call him Jesus." The angel tells a petrified Mary, who recovers enough to eventually reply, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. May it be done to me according to your word." In Matthew's Gospel, Joseph grapples with news that his betrothed is suddenly pregnant and not by him. Matthew writes, "Joseph, since he was a righteous man, yet unwilling to expose Mary to shame, decided to divorce her quietly." That is, until the angel appears to him as well and says, "It is through the Holy Spirit that this child has been conceived in her." What's left unsaid in these two scenes could fill pages. Think back to the panic or dread you may have felt over a surprise pregnancy, particularly a very young girl's. Think of a shattering betrayal of a lover or a spouse, how the once sure earth disintegrated underneath of you. The comparison, in some small way, begins to get close to what both Mary and Joseph must have felt. For Mary, the stakes were literally life and death. Even as a teenager, she had to know she faced not just shame in her family and village and disbelief of her wild story, but possibly a gruesome death. Stoning was the punishment for bearing a child, not of one's husband or betrothed. Joseph, Mary's apparently betrayed husband-to-be, faced not death, but the same shame and ridicule, and a searing blow to his trust in Mary. God impregnated Mary, the angel told him. Really? Think of even devout men you know. How would they react? How many believe in miracles like this one? How many would accept Mary as Joseph did? Remember, we look back at the Gospels with the benefit of 20/20 hindsight. We rarely consider or appreciate the fantastic leaps of faith believers made right in the moment. Jesus was not the Son of God in all his glory, but an unknown carpenter from Nazareth, when he convinced the first apostles to drop their fishing nets, leave their families and their place in the community to follow him, an itinerant pauper preacher, all around the countryside. Mary and Joseph could not see into the future when this angel of the Lord suddenly showed up, making outrageous claims and upending their lives. The Gospels do not tell us all that happened between the angel's first "you will conceive in your womb" and Mary's complete surrender to God's will. Nor do they chart Joseph's turmoil. Yet we do know that both Mary and Joseph made a decision to trust in God in real time in their tiny village, surrounded by doubting family and suspicious friends. They risked their own security, status, standing, everything really, in the hope of things unseen. I imagine Mary, Joseph, and those early followers of Jesus went to the temple on a regular basis, where they heard how God took care of their descendants when they were escaping the Egyptians and wandering for years in the desert. I imagine they believed, on some level, that God was with them too. Joseph must have made a decent living as a carpenter. However, he didn't have enough to buy a lamb, the customary offering when presenting your firstborn in the temple. Instead, he gives 2 pigeons, the offering of the poor. Can you imagine that conversation between Mary and Joseph? "But he's the Son of God, and you're taking 2 pigeons?" We need to remember the people in today's gospel were folks like you and me. We older folks need to reflect on the example of Simeon and Anna. They were resentful of the younger men and women, or they could have been resentful of the younger men or women taking their places, although I doubt it. They were able to welcome this new and younger world because their prayerful attention to the Lord had established their utter trust in God's promises of a future life. There are few more remarkable signs of hope than that of older people whose eyes are still bright with the promise of better days. In fact, the very act of taking an infant into one's arms, as Simeon did, is a profound affirmation of one's sure knowledge that God has given the victory to life. Today's feast is a reminder for you and for me to read the stories of our ancestors in the Bible, to pray with these scriptures on a daily basis like St. Ignatius recommends, to join other believers in church every week to hear the gospel proclaimed, so that when we face a time of crisis, whether it be problems we face on a day-to-day basis or a visit from an angel, we know that God is with us. Pope Francis has said, "Too often Jesus passes by in our lives. He sends an angel, and we are so caught up in our thoughts and concerns we don't even notice." If we feel the desire to improve, to be a better person, Christ is knocking at the door of our heart. Let us open those doors to Christ today.